There is something I wish somebody had said to me before I got married in the Philippines, not don't do it, not they only want your money, not any of that bitter stuff you hear from men who have been hurt and decided an entire country must be responsible for it. I wish somebody had looked me in the eye and said, before you marry her, make sure you know the difference between being loved and being needed, because those two things can feel almost identical when you are lonely. I learned that sitting on a plastic chair outside a little apartment in Tagaytay, listening to rain hammer a corrugated roof while my wife cried inside. I had 186,000 pesos left in the bank, about $3,300 at the time. 2 years earlier, I had arrived in the Philippines believing I had finally figured out the last chapter of my life. I was wrong. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 68 years old. I grew up outside Dayton, Ohio, and spent 37 years working in commercial heating and air conditioning. I was the guy companies called when a rooftop unit died in July and everybody in the building suddenly remembered how important air conditioning was. I made a decent living. Nothing fancy. I owned a small house, drove used trucks, paid my bills, and put money into my retirement account whenever I could. My wife, Susan, died when I was 63, pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. That sentence still feels impossible to me. 34 years of marriage and then 6 months. After she died, my house became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling from the bedroom. I would make coffee in the morning and pour 2 cups without thinking. Then I would stand there staring at the second one like an idiot. My daughter Emily wanted me to move closer to her in North Carolina. She meant well. She had 2 kids, a job, a husband who traveled, a life that was already full. I visited for 3 weeks and realized exactly what I would become if I stayed. Helpful at first, then convenient, then one more person everybody had to plan around. That scared me more than being alone, so I went home and tried everything people tell widowers to try. Church groups, golf, volunteer work, a dating site for people over 50. I even bought a fishing boat, which was ridiculous because I do not particularly like fishing. I know, I know. Famous last words from a lonely man with too much time and a credit card. The boat lasted 9 months. The loneliness lasted longer. One night I was watching videos about retirement costs in Mexico, then Portugal, then Thailand. You know how that goes. One video becomes 10. Around midnight, a video popped up from an American living in the Philippines. He was sitting outside with a cup of coffee talking about what his monthly budget looked like. Rent, 22,000 pesos, electricity, 4,500, food, maybe 15,000. He kept saying, "You do not have to be rich here. You just have to stop trying to live like you are rich." That line stuck with me. For the next 4 months, I researched the Philippines like I was studying for an exam. Expat forums, Facebook groups, cost of living videos, retirement communities, health insurance discussions, men complaining, men bragging, men warning everybody not to listen to the other men. The internet is very useful right up until everybody starts shouting. What reassured me were the ordinary people, retired teachers, truck drivers, mechanics, guys with Social Security and modest pensions who were not living in beachfront villas. They were renting simple apartments, eating local food, taking tricycles, building routines, regular people. That mattered to me. I booked a 30-day trip before making any decision. I landed in Manila, spent 3 nights there, and knew immediately I did not want to live in that much noise and traffic. A driver I met suggested Tagaytay. The first morning there, I walked outside and the air was cool enough that I actually laughed. I had expected tropical heat everywhere. Instead, there was fog hanging low over the ridge, motorcycles humming past, roosters somewhere behind the houses, and the smell of coffee and grilled meat drifting up from the road. Later that day, I sat overlooking Tal Lake with a bowl of balalo in front of me, steam fogging my glasses, and I thought, maybe I can breathe here. That was the beginning. I went back to Ohio, sold the boat, rented out my house through a property manager, packed 2 suitcases, and returned 6 months later. My first long-term apartment in Tagaytay was 26,000 pesos a month, around $460 then. One bedroom, small balcony, tile floors, a water heater in the shower that looked like it had been installed by somebody with more courage than training. I loved it. For the first time since Susan died, my days had shape again. Coffee at 6, walk before the traffic got heavy, breakfast at a little place near Olivares, groceries, reading on the balcony when the rain came in. I met people slowly, which was good for me. Then I met Marissa. She was 49, worked at a pharmacy, and had a laugh that started quiet and then took over her whole face. We met because I was trying to explain that I wanted a different brand of blood pressure monitor and apparently doing a terrible job of it. She helped me. I came back 2 days later, even though I did not need anything. That part still makes me smile. We started with coffee, then lunch, then day trips. She had 2 adult children and lived with her older sister. Her English was much better than my Tagalog, which consisted mostly of greetings, food, and apologies. For 8 months, it felt easy. That is important. 8 months, I did not meet her on a dating site. She never asked me for money when we were getting to know each other. She had a job. She paid for small things. She argued with me when I tried to pay for everything. She met my daughter on video calls. I met her family. There was no moment where a villain entered the story. That is the warning. Real trouble rarely announces itself like trouble. The first request was 18,000 pesos for her sister's dental work, about $300. Marissa did not demand it. She looked embarrassed even asking. I gave it willingly. A month later, her son needed help with tuition. Then there was a cousin whose motorcycle had been damaged. Then medication for an aunt. Every request had a face attached to it. Every reason made sense on its own. And every time I helped, I felt useful. That feeling is dangerous when you have spent years feeling unnecessary. I want to say that again because this is the part I did not understand. I did not just give money because I loved Marissa. I gave money because being asked made me feel important, needed. When you are 66 years old and your wife is gone and your daughter has her own life and nobody back home really depends on you anymore, somebody saying, "We need your help," can land in your chest like, "You matter." Those are not the same sentence, but lonely men can hear them as the same sentence. We got married 14 months after we met. Small civil ceremony, simple meal afterward. Her family was warm to me. Emily watched by video from North Carolina and cried. I cried too. I was happy. I need you to understand that too. I was genuinely happy for a while. Marriage changed the shape of the requests. Before, I was helping Marissa's family. Afterward, it slowly became our responsibility. Her son wanted to start a small delivery business. 120,000 pesos. I said no at first. Then Marissa said something that hit me harder than she probably intended. In my family, we help each other. I heard the unspoken second half. If you do not help, maybe you are not really family. So I gave 90,000. The business lasted 4 months. Then came repairs to her sister's house after heavy rain. Then a hospital bill for an uncle. Then school expenses for a niece. Again, none of these things were imaginary. That is what made it complicated. People really were struggling. People really did need help. The mistake was not believing them. The mistake was never deciding where my responsibility ended. I had arrived in the Philippines with rules for my retirement account. I knew how much I could withdraw each year. I had spreadsheets. I had emergency reserves. I had spent my whole working life telling younger technicians not to confuse revenue with profit. Then I threw all that discipline out the window because money had become emotional. By our second anniversary, I had transferred or spent a little over 1.4 million pesos helping relatives, covering emergencies, backing plans, and fixing problems. Around $25,000, $25,000. I am not a wealthy man. That was not pocket change. The argument that finally broke something between us started over a refrigerator. Not even our refrigerator. Her cousin's refrigerator. Marissa told me their food was spoiling and they needed 32,000 pesos for a replacement. I said no. She got quiet. I had learned that quiet was worse than shouting. I asked why I was expected to buy appliances for adults who had never once asked what my retirement budget looked like. She said I was humiliating her. I said I felt like an ATM. She started crying. I immediately regretted the words, but I did not take them back. That night, she slept facing the wall. The next morning, she left to stay with her sister. That is how I ended up outside in the rain with 186,000 pesos in my local account and a feeling in my stomach I had not felt since Susan died. Not heartbreak exactly, fear. The fear that I had built my new life on something I did not understand. For 3 days, Marissa and I barely spoke. My first instinct was to blame her family. Then I blamed myself. Then I did something I should have done before we ever got married. I asked questions without arguing with the answers. We sat at a little table in her sister's house. There was a fan clicking above us, a television playing softly in another room, somebody frying garlic in the kitchen. I brought a notebook. I asked Marissa what marriage meant to her financially, not emotionally, financially. She stared at me like I had asked a strange question. She said, "We are one family now." I asked what that meant when her brother needed money. She said, "We help if we can." Her sister, "We help if we can." Her children, of course, nieces and nephews, if it is important, medical emergencies, always, if possible. I asked, "What does if we can mean?" That was where we discovered the problem. To me, if we can meant after retirement savings, housing, medical reserves, insurance, and our own future were protected. To her, if we can meant if money was physically available and somebody close to us had a serious need. Neither of us had lied. We had simply married before translating the most important sentence in our relationship. And I do not mean translating English to Tagalog. I mean translating values, family, duty, security, generosity, privacy, retirement. Those words can mean completely different things to two good people. That conversation lasted 4 hours. There were tears. There was anger. There were long stretches where neither of us said anything. I learned things about her I should have known earlier. Her mother had kept their family afloat by borrowing from relatives. Her sister had paid part of Marissa's schooling. Her brother had once covered medical expenses when Marissa's son was young. In her mind, family support was not charity. It was a debt that moved in circles over decades. She learned things about me too. She had assumed my retirement accounts made me rich because the numbers looked enormous compared with ordinary monthly wages. She did not understand that the money had to last the rest of my life. I showed her, not vaguely. I opened the statements. I showed her Social Security, my small pension, the rent from my house, insurance costs, estimated medical expenses, everything. Then I showed her what happened if we kept spending an extra $1,000 a month helping other people. The money did not vanish tomorrow. That was the problem. It vanished slowly, at 75, at 80, at exactly the age when I would be least able to replace it. Marissa looked at the numbers for a long time. Then she said very quietly, "I thought you were saying no because you did not care." I told her, "I was saying yes because I was afraid you would think I did not care." There it was, our entire marriage problem in 2 sentences. We did not separate, but we changed everything. We created a monthly family help budget of 12,000 pesos, 12,000. If somebody needed help, it came from that amount. If it was gone until the next month. True medical emergencies could be discussed separately, but both of us had to agree. No loans for businesses, no secret transfers, no using my retirement account to solve a problem that somebody else had known about for months. And this next rule mattered most. I was allowed to say no without having to prove that I loved anybody. Marissa was allowed to be disappointed without me treating that disappointment like a threat. It sounds simple. It was not simple. The first 6 months were awkward. A relative would ask. Marissa would look at me. I could feel the old panic rising in my chest. If I say no, will she resent me? If I say yes, am I being used? Eventually, that question changed. Can we afford this and do we both agree? Much healthier question. We have been married almost 4 years now. We are still together. I am telling you that because I know what kind of story people expect when they hear an older American man say he learned a warning about marriage in the Philippines. They expect betrayal. Maybe a younger woman empties his bank account and disappears. Maybe the family is running some elaborate scheme. That happens to some people. I have met men here with stories that would make your stomach turn. But my warning is harder because it does not give you a villain. Do not marry someone until you understand what marriage means in their world, and make sure they understand what it means in yours. Talk about money before romance makes money impossible to talk about. Talk about parents, adult children, siblings, emergencies, debt, housing, who gets helped, how much, how often. What happens when you disagree? Do not settle for, we will figure it out. That is what I said. We figured it out at a much higher price than necessary. And if you are an older man coming here after divorce, widowhood, retirement, or years of loneliness, be especially careful with the feeling of being needed. I am not telling you to become suspicious of kindness. That is no way to live. I am telling you to know yourself. When somebody needs you, does it make you feel younger, stronger, important again? Does saying yes make you feel like the man you used to be when everybody called you because you could fix things? That was me. For 37 years, I fixed things, broken compressors, failed motors, frozen coils, problems people could point at and say, Robert, make this work again. Then I retired, my wife died, my daughter grew busy with her own family, and suddenly nobody needed Robert to fix anything. The first time Marissa's family came to me with a problem, some part of me woke up. I mistook that feeling for proof of love. It was not proof. Love was Marissa sitting at that table for 4 hours, even when she was angry. Love was her agreeing to a budget that sometimes forced her to disappoint people she cared about. Love was me learning that generosity mattered deeply to her and making room for it instead of demanding she think exactly like an American retiree from Ohio. Love was both of us giving up the fantasy that the other person would simply understand without being told. These days, our life is quieter. Our apartment costs 28,000 pesos a month now. We still live in Tagaytay. Most mornings, I drink coffee outside before the fog burns off. Marissa grows herbs in plastic pots along the wall. Basil, mint, something she insists is doing fine, even though it looks dead to me. Sometimes we go down toward the lake, sometimes we do nothing at all. That is one of the things I love most about getting older. Doing nothing with the right person can feel like a full day. Last week, rain came down hard in the afternoon. The same kind of rain I remember from that day outside our old apartment. It hit the roof so loudly we had to raise our voices to hear each other. Marissa brought me coffee. She sat beside me. Her phone buzzed. A family message. She read it, looked at me, and said, "They are asking for help with school uniforms." Years ago, my stomach would have tightened. This time I asked, "What is left in the family budget?" She checked. 7,000. I said, "Then that is what we have to work with." She nodded. No fight, no test of love, no fear, just two people who finally understood the same sentence. So if you are thinking about marrying in the Philippines, I am not going to tell you not to do it. I would be a hypocrite if I did. I love my wife. I love the life we built. Moving here pulled me out of a darkness I had started to think was permanent. But before you stand in front of anybody and promise the rest of your life, understand what you are actually promising. Understand what family means to her. Understand what money means to you. Understand what saying no will feel like. Understand what saying yes could cost. And above all, understand this: being needed can feel wonderful. Being loved can feel wonderful too. But they are not the same thing. I had to lose $25,000 and nearly lose my marriage before I learned the difference. You do not have to.